Hi, everybody. This is Eric Unger, and welcome to the first episode of The Red Lettuce, Episode 1, The Phantom Lettuce, which is pretty awesome. Thank you all for watching. If you are watching, this is live, so I don't know if anyone's watching. But, you might be wondering, what is the red lettuce? What's the concept? Like, what's going on here? So I created a show called The Red Lettuce, and I wanted to combine communism and veganism together because I think those two things go together very well. I think those two movements should be joined together in the effort to overthrow and dismantle capitalism, because it's the system that's destroying the planet and the world and all living beings. So that's why I created it, and that's hence the name. And this is a show where we talk about the political landscape and current events through a queer, communist, vegan lens. And I have a co-host with me, his name is Paul. Paul isn't really any of those things, but he's close enough.
I'm not queer. I'm not vegan. I'm not a communist. I have queer leanings and communist leanings, and I was vegan for a while.
So
but
you're
I'm
close
weak.
enough.
I'm weak.
Close enough. So I'm really thankful to have Paul with me to discuss what's going on in the world right now. As you can see, I'm wearing a shirt that says U.S. wars are imperialist, and I got that from the Empire Files. They're an awesome show. It's an awesome show, and Abby Martin and Mike Preisner are heroes, and I recommend watching all their videos and subscribing to them as well and buying their merch. But our first story of the day has to do with the U.S. Rogue state and its aggression on Iran and Iraq. And as of right now, we are at war, and Iran has rightfully struck back against the U.S. empire. It has every right to do so. It's defending itself. As of right now, it has taken down U.S. war jets, and it has bombed military bases. And the war is on right now. And Paul, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, at the
weigh
time
in.
of recording this, I mean, it is active, right? It's going on right now. We were doing our show Hardlines Media right before this, and about 5:15, we started seeing tweets to the effect of, the Iranian press is saying that Iran has initiated strikes against air bases in Iraq. American air bases, specifically the Al-Assad air base, which it was nice to have John Hodges here in the studio just a while ago, because he was able to explain, because he's former military, was able to point out that the Al-Assad air base in Iraq is maybe not the largest air base in Iraq, but one of the large air bases in Iraq. It's significant, and this is the kind of escalation of tensions that we've been worrying about, but also expecting to see in the wake of the assassination of Soleimani.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm just getting a tweet right now, and it's from the this is from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It said, if Tehran is targeted, we will strike inside the United States. So they mean business, and rightfully so. And this is really the time for Americans to get into the streets and oppose war of all kinds, but especially right now on Iran. We need to oppose this war of aggression. If there's any deaths, but I think there are some unconfirmed deaths already, and if they are confirmed, this is on the hands of Donald Trump and his genocidal administration.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's no way. There's no two ways to dice this. So it's interesting though when you start talking about it and thinking about it from a little bit more of a philosophical point of view, because from the on the groundness of it, you end up in sort of the two camps. The camp that we're in, which is sort of nothing about America's actions here are justifiable. America is lying through its teeth about everything that it's saying justifies what it's doing. Nothing that it's saying justifies what it's doing would, in fact, justify its doing. But the justifications are lies. The actions are abhorrent. This deserves every level of condemnation. This requires that people get out into the street and protest. I loved seeing the video of like Mike Preisner in L.A.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was amazing.
He always makes awesome speeches. Very fiery guy and very well spoken. He's a hero for sure. And I was at the protest in Chicago, and let me tell you, Chicago is very anti-imperialist, and I think that's a sentiment throughout the country. As we saw, I think there were 80 demonstrations throughout the country, thousands in the streets. I mean, in Chicago alone, I was there and I saw everything. I was participating. We broke through like the police, like they designate like where we need to go. We broke through that. We went into this traffic and people got arrested. It was intense, and this war should be opposed at all costs, and we should really be in the streets opposing
what's
this.
weird?
Oh, and also. This administration has taken this a step further and started to attack and criminalize Iranian citizens. Oh, well, actually, any Iranian person from Iran, regardless of citizenship, on their U.S. borders. They detain them, question them. So there's another. The U.S. is unleashing a xenophobic terror campaign against Iranians here as well. I don't know if you guys discussed that on the Heartland show.
Not really all that extensively, but I think that's important. One thing I wanted to get at also, though, was sort of the U.S. imperialist line. That's its way of justifying or attempting to justify what it's doing is not universally being condemned in the way I think that we should, right? I think there are your mega Trump apologists, your MAGA folks, love this. They love it. They love it. And so there's some part of that comes back to the election. Is like, well, maybe maybe that helps Trump among his base in some ways. But I'm starting to see arguments come from folks that are not totally on board with the killing of everyone, but will say there's nothing that can be done to stop America. It's very like it's a little bit of zero-sum political thinking, but also it's bigger stick diplomacy thinking of like, no, we have the bigger army, and so we will win. We will get what we want. Like, and as much as we say, yeah, but that's unjust. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Let's not assassinate people. Don't start wars. Hey, Iran is justified in trying to protect itself. Hey, you're overreacting. Hey, this is overreach. Hey, this is a war crime. To that person, war crimes are just a fake, fairy tale that, people who are good-natured tell themselves the world works that way. But in reality, the person who has the bigger stick wins. And there aren't really rules to war, because the person with the bigger stick wins. And we've got the bigger stick, and if you're going to say we shouldn't win, then you hate America. And so that's sort of, and I do a horrible job at making this argument because I think it's not a good argument. And so I do want to throw it out there as like, this is shit people say.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah. And I think we should kind of highlight how this all started, what kind of really ignited this war. With the assassination of Soleimani. There's been a disinformation campaign through the U.S. corporate media The corporate media is always pro-war. They're funded by the military-industrial complex, and the State Department. They get approval from them, so they repeat all their talking points as well. So if you just watch mainstream media, you're going to hear that Soleimani was this evil terrorist who was plotting against the United States, and he needed to be taken out, and what have you. But that's a lie. Trump is lying. The media is lying. What actually did happen was Soleimani is a revered hero. He defeated ISIS in Syria and helped fight ISIS in Iraq and throughout the region, really. Mm-hmm. So he's a really beloved war hero, and the Trump administration assassinated him. It wasn't by mistake. It was on purpose. They knew he was coming there because, according to Abdul Mahdi, who is the prime minister of Iraq, he had planned to meet Soleimani on the morning that the general was killed to discuss a diplomatic reproach that Iraq was brokering between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So he was there on a peaceful mission, and Abdul Mahdi said that Trump personally thanked him for the efforts, even as he was planning the hit on Soleimani, thus creating the impression that the Iranian general was safe to travel. And that's when, on that morning, Trump ordered the assassination.
So Trump knew that Soleimani was going to be traveling to Baghdad. He knew why he was going to be traveling to Baghdad. The reason was for basically peace talks, right, for diplomatic negotiation and actually advancing peace. So in order to actually advance peace,
right,
Trump assassinates that guy.
Right.
That's the thing that, according to Trump, is going to prevent a war and not start it.
War
is
is
making
peace.
sure that we don't have
War
these
is
goddamn
peace, Paul.
talks.
Yeah.
Enough of these fucking peace talks. I'm going to
Can't
kill
have
that guy.
peace. The empire can't have peace because otherwise imperialism won't succeed.
Right.
And capitalism won't succeed. It goes against those two things. And it's also ridiculous because they said that this was like all of a sudden, like, we caught him plotting terror attacks against the U.S. and personnel in the region, which isn't true because Pompeo pitched assassinating Soleimani to Trump several months ago, well before any attacks were imminent. And in the wake of the general's killing, a U.S. official revealed to the New York Times that the NSA had intercepted communications the United States had between the Iranian Supreme Leader, the Ayatollah, and General Soleimani, showing that the Ayatollah had not yet approved any plans by the general for an attack, which it wasn't. It's a lie.
It's stupid to begin with. It's the same thing as
This
the
has been
Iraq
planned
War
for a while.
Justification, right? It's
Right.
just, you're going to do bad stuff in the future. What is this, Minority Report? Is this the Future Crimes Division? What's going on? You're going to retaliate against something someone is planning to do in the future that you know that they're planning to do because you say so?
Yeah.
You're not going to present any evidence? No. In fact, we're going to assassinate first and then tell people why we did it and then not give them any of the evidence to support the thing of why we did it. The other thing that I've mentioned before but really bums me out with the justification for why we assassinated Soleimani was he's a bad guy. Everyone knows he's a bad guy. You knew he was a bad guy. He's a bad guy. You know he's killed people. He's a bad guy. He orchestrated all these things. It's like, dude, he's a career soldier. He is was the top-ranking military official in Iraq. Of course he has killed people.
He's a fucking general, duh.
Yeah, that's
that's what generals do.
Yes, exactly. So
it's like Magdad, what's his name, Mattis, and all the other fucking generals. Of course, they're all killers. They're imperialists.
I bet a general signed off on this particular assassination. Is that general now an open field for anyone to be like, dude's a murderer?
That's their job.
Right. So
it's insane.
And the thing that they pin on him, Americans have died at the attacks that he has been a part of orchestrating. Yeah, well, he's a top Iranian official, and guess what? Iran has not exactly been a country that the United States has wanted to give foreign aid to or wanted to play nice with for several decades now. Excuse him for getting involved in military actions that happen to go against the United States. Now, I always do this, man. Daniel loves to do this. If you look at a map of Iran, and look at a map with U.S. military bases.
All the bases.
And you're just like, oh, that's it. Iran got its country too close to all of our military bases. Needs to get its country away from all of our military. It's bringing danger right to all of our military bases. How dare they?
And the United States, kind of helped Iraq in the 80s, giving them, nuclear weapons.
Right. Yep.
And, devastated the country not that long ago. So excuse Iran, please.
There's just so much about all of this conflict that it's cognitive dissonance, right? You're just being pulled apart.
The empire's projecting itself onto its victims.
Right. Assassinating him was a peace building tactic.
Right.
Iran's they're going to come get us and they're going to make America less safe. We're certainly not the aggressors here. All of it is just, your head is spinning so fast. So we had to do this in retaliation for, they attacked the American Embassy compound. How many casualties were there in the American Embassy compound that this militia group raided? Oh, 0? Interesting. Oh, a little bit of property destruction. Wait, well, why did they raid the compound? Oh, looks like we murdered 25 of them from a helicopter and injured almost 100 more. Oh, they must have done something really bad to warrant that. Oh, one of their guys fired a shoulder-mounted rocket at the American Embassy compound that killed somebody. One person. Yeah. One American contractor. It's not clear exactly who did it and under whose orders. Now, here's the thing that really gets me. This really gets me is we said that shoulder-mounted rocket, that was done at Iran told them to do that. You're like, that's weird. Why is Iran telling an Iraqi militia what to do? Also, an Iraqi militia that has been absorbed into the Iraqi armed forces. It's a coalition force of the Iraqi military. Right. So the Iraqi military is taking direct orders from Soleimani now. That's what we're to say. Certainly they're allied, but you're saying that Iran is at fault for the actions of a militia group that is Iraqi, that is part of the Iraqi military, that sum total killed one American contractor. And when we talk about an American embassy compound, that's a living quarter space. Right? So this is not like the official office building. Like, this isn't where Americans go if they need to get their visa or if they need, they lost their passport when they're in Iraq, right?
Right.
This is living quarters for American expatriates and diplomatic service members and sort of military non-combatant folks. It's almost like a giant barracks or living area. It's large. Here's an interesting fun fact, right? So before Iraq asked us to leave the first time in 2011, there were around 13,000 people living in this American embassy compound. In 2012, the year after Iraq asked us to leave the first time, there were 16,000 people. We increased the number of Americans living in this American embassy compound in the year after Iraq asked us to leave. They have extremely formally asked us to leave. It has gone through their Congress now. That was just a couple weeks ago. And we're still saying, well, it was a non-binding resolution, so they're not really asking us to leave, so we're going to stay. Like, this is so frustrating on so many levels. Like,
I know.
I'm sorry, I'm bogarting all this.
No, but it's just still, it's so insufferable. Trump is saying horrible criminal things still. Since Soleimani's assassination, Iraqi's parliament has voted to expel all U.S. troops from the country, and Iran's Grand Ayatollah has sworn to exact severe revenge, which we're seeing right now, on the people that committed this crime, which was the U.S. empire and the Trump administration. And Trump has been tweeting, these criminal tweets saying that he's going to destroy all these historical sites, more war crimes added to the list under his belt. So it's just unbelievable what we're seeing.
Yeah,
And the only way to stop this is to have an anti-imperialist war movement that's rooted in anti-capitalism in the streets, challenging empire and challenging all of the institutions that benefit from imperialism. And that's the only way that we're going to stop this. And that's the only way that we're going to stop the empire from continuing. Because as long as the U.S. empire exists, world peace will never happen.
Right.
And that's just a fact.
Yeah. It's interesting. So this is even before all of the Soleimani stuff happened in the past week. I have been noticing that the anti-war left is like mostly absent, right? There was a pretty large contingent of anti-war left activism in the early 2000s, right? 2003
Right.
Iraq War. There was a lot of protests. It was pretty visceral. People remember that. No blood for oil, right? That was the
Right.
slogan. And in the wake of that, in the current, in the contemporary era where we are now, I do see some anti-war activism, more broadly speaking, politically, right, outside of the context of Iran, right? Mm-hmm. But mostly it's coming from an isolationist right-wing perspective, which is really bothersome to me. Like, it's one of those where you're like, I kind of want to just take the, anti-war stance and just be like, all right, at least we're anti-war, but something about how that individual gets to that type of isolationism, that type of anti-war, I just don't think is good or correct. That just there's something to be said about how you get there.
And I also think it was more of like a partisan thing back then too, because it was like a Republican war, and that's not how it should be. I think it needs to be obviously it's much larger than that. It's not both parties are pro-war.
Yeah.
So we got two pro-war parties, two pro-capitalist parties. They're controlled by the same people. The Democratic Party is not an opposition party. It is the opposite of an opposition party. They just gave Trump the biggest military gift in the world. The NDAA, they stripped out everything that could have stopped Trump from doing what he did.
National Defense Authorization Act.
Right.
Yep.
And look where it has gotten us.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, the silver lining, the little bit of, light at the end of the tunnel is that this type of action, this egregious, assassination and escalation and the tit-for-tat response and the disproportionate bombings is the kind of thing that is actually getting people out to protest again. Like you were at the anti-war protest this past weekend. I saw a video of that. I didn't get to go, but hopefully that grows. Hopefully that escalates. Hopefully we see a resurgence of the no blood for oil. Maybe,
yes.
Hopefully, because that's what stops this type of thing. That's what stops military aggression from our government. That's what changes government policy is getting out there and protesting, actual activism.
Yeah, and this time around, back then, there wasn't really much alternative media that could really plant the seeds of critical class consciousness and anti-war sentiment, and anti-imperialist sentiment, and anti-capitalist sentiment. And that's why we have outlets like the Gray Zone, Empire Files. What else is there?
For specifically anti-war
type?
I don't know, Jimmy Dore?
The Jimmy Dore Show. I can't believe I didn't say that. But yes, the Jimmy Dore Show.
Graham Elwood, political vigilante.
The Real News Network is good.
Yeah.
Caitlin
Johnstone,
Katie Halper.
Yep.
So, hopefully these outlets can really, I think having those outlets now is going to change.
Well, and talking about those outlets, because to be fair, this is what we are doing is commentary and discussion,
Right.
Right, and so the folks that really do the heavy lifting legwork are folks like Ben Norton, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Anya Parampil,
Parampil, yeah.
Parampil,
Anya Kalik.
yeah, Eva
Kalik.
Bartlett, Vanessa Beeley. Vanessa Beeley is of Mint Press News. Eva Bartlett, I think, is freelance. But the first few names I mentioned, Ben Norton, Max Blumenthal, and Aaron Mate, and the like, are from the Gray Zone Project. And I think those are some of the few investigative journalism outlets that sort of take this general starting point, this perspective, and go, okay, well, we've gotten to the end of what we can reason and understand without getting out of our chairs and out from in front of the computer screen. Time to actually go to Venezuela and find out. Time to actually go to Syria
They're
and
the
find
ones that
out.
actually go
and
actually
get those
do
interviews.
They're doing the jobs that fucking Anderson Cooper's supposed to be doing, and all these big time multi-million-dollar journalists do, but they don't do any of that. They just read a script and pretend that they
Stenographers for power, right?
They're the stenographers for the ruling elites. So hopefully outlets that, like we just mentioned, really help change the political landscape with this war that we're in right now, because again, we need to get in the streets, and that's the only way to stop it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Put your hands on the gears, right?
Exactly.
Who said that? I have to look at if somebody knows in the chat. Throw that in the comments somewhere.
Yeah.
All of the people that are watching right now. It'll be on the internet. Somebody will watch it. Somebody will find it later.
Yeah.
/ I'm going to Google it while we're continuing to talk.
Right now. But I don't know. Should we?
We can move on.
Move on.
Yeah.
My phone's here, so if we get any updates, obviously we'll mention that. So the next topic that we have for tonight is what's going on in Australia. There's been fires throughout Australia, and it's devastated wildlife and people that live there. 500 million animals are now dead due to this tragedy. It's still ongoing, and the what's the guy's name? Australia.
Which guy in Australia?
The
Prime Minister?
Yes. What's
Actually,
his name?
off the top of my head, I don't know.
I don't know, but he's
We
an
will find
asshole. He is a climate change denier, and he's not really doing anything to stop what's going on. And this is where we really want to tie in capitalism and animal liberation, and why it's important for socialists and communists and everyone on the left to
Scott Morrison is his name.
Scott Morrison, yeah.
Real right winger.
Yeah.
Australia is also, and this is interesting because we were just mentioning Caitlin Johnstone, but she is Australian. She's married to an American, but they live in Australia. And she points out a lot of what we don't often think about, the cooperation between particularly the intelligence arms, military intelligence, CIA, and things like that. A lot of apparatus is in Australia. That's the main way that they try to sort of interface with American the war machine, right? Because they're not sending massive numbers of troops. They're not developing bunches and bunches of weapons, but they are situated, geographically in a place that's closer to and easier to have satellite arrays,
right?
And basically spying equipment for the intelligence community. So that's Australia's big interface with the United States. Not that that has anything to do with forest fires, but since we were talking about war earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so what I'm trying to say with this is, I think it's important to really tie these two together, like leftist ideologies, communism, socialism, really go hand in hand with veganism. And I get in arguments with both vegans and socialists or communists or whoever else on the left about veganism and socialism, like both sides, depending who I'm talking to. And neither of them really get it, or they think they need to oppose each other because one is a singular issue and one focuses on too much and not too much on animals. And it's just like, well, that's just not right or accurate, and that's not really what all this is about. It's about realizing the common enemy, which is the capitalist system, which is the...
Wait, it isn't the cattle?
No, it's not. No, no. Sadly,
that's not the enemy.
No,
because
no.
then
you just push them over. You know.
We going cow tipping later. Is that
Cow
what's up?
tipping, yeah.
Apparently, that's not a thing.
Yeah,
I hear that's not a thing.
It's not.
I don't know.
I guess not. I'm glad it's not.
Karen M's in the
Glad
chat.
it's
Hi,
not.
Karen.
Karen.
Hi. Karen M's in
Oh,
the
hi,
chat.
Karen. And DCK Punk.
Yeah, DCK Punk's joining us.
Hey,
Knew we were doing
guys.
it. We're not on 99 Perspectives, by the way. We're only on Red Lettuce.
This is
at
the
moment.
Red Lettuce.
The Red Lettuce.
Like, subscribe, enjoy the Patreon page that I have there.
So with
really
regard
appreciate
to, so there's sort of two different topics we're discussing here, right? And so I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit because I have some general ideas and I've some of the articles that we read through, and the way I've internalized and understand it best. But I wonder if you think that this is off base or even on the right train of thought, and that is almost that we need to consider the life of all species on the planet as part of nature, right? It's part of the
Right.
and that includes human life, right? It's not something that we should be trying to put into our capital markets system, right? It's not something that that should be. I'm going to forget the terms for it, but there's that quadrant. There's the rivalrous, non-rivalrous. And then exclusionary, non-exclusionary types of goods or whatever types of things that exist. And so what is non-competitive, right, competitive, non-competitive, or rivalrous, non-rivalrous. And I think it's the non-competitive, non-rivalrous, right, category of things that are like, these are the commons. These are the things that everyone has access to, that no one can prevent anyone from having access to. And we need to treat as something that everyone can partake in. So things like the air, right? The water, right? And so in some ways we need to consider the ecosystems and nature and the animals and, organisms that live within it as part of a balancing force to that, to the health of the planet, right?
Yeah.
That is that's a resource. Animals are a resource for the planet that are there primarily to help food grow better, right? To help keep habitats healthy, right? To maintain a food chain. And when humans go and interrupt that and try to marketify them because bacon tastes good, then we disrupt that. We disrupt
It creates
that
a
system.
false need. That's what the system
okay.
does. Capitalism creates a false need for things that we don't need, and it's killing us. Why? Because it's profitable. Who gives a shit? Like, for example, look at Zantac. That fucking acid reducer pill has cancer in it. But I mean, yeah, it's needed, but like it has cancer in it because it's profitable to do so. And bacon still sells and is being made because we don't fucking need it, but it's profitable anyways, and it kills people because meat is a carcinogen when you cook it. It's a cancer-causing thing, but we're being told that you need it because it's protein, bro, and shit like that. And you get that from plants. And the issues I have here is, what's going on in Australia is absolutely caused by the meat industry. That is for sure a cause of our looming climate crisis. What's going on right now in Australia with all the devastation, all the animals that are being killed there by the fires, our increasing temperature is a lot of it's due to the meat industry. 50% of it is caused by the animal ag emissions, the CO2. But that's not the only thing, and that's why this is why I get into debates with some vegans. It's like they just focus on the ag industry. And some socialists don't even focus on the animal ag industry, and that's frustrating. But on the other side, it's like, okay, well, vegans, yes, the animal ag industry is a force to overthrow and dismantle. But we have also other issues. If you take the animals out of the slaughterhouses, what's going to kill them? Because next is the environmental pollution from all these major corporations like fossil fuel companies and the military-industrial complex, because they're going to fucking poison the environment, and it's going to kill the animals there too. And the fucking world's going to end because capitalism as a system needs to endlessly grow in order to function and expand and profit off of things. So you can't have a system that depends on infinite growth on a finite planet. It doesn't work. So that's why vegans and socialists and communists need to work together instead of with these ridiculous fighting each other. They're perfectly aligned, and that's what they need to see. So
there's so much when it comes to speaking about the intersection between how do I put it? Nature is a very broad, generalized term, but how we interface with particularly animals, right? And so I can see why people will come at this from like the agriculture industry perspective, right? The ag, right? Big ag is a problem, right? Yeah. Factory farming is entirely inhumane for the animals that are in that captivity, but the pollution is also a major factor. The effect on our own food supply for those who are not vegan, right? The amount of antibiotics that these animals get, the living conditions that they're in, waste, particularly of like hog farms and things like that, particularly difficult for a lot of the ecosystems to absorb that amount of just fecal waste. And these are the types of things, and monocultures, right? Even in, so moving away just from the animal part of it, but the way that we farm corn in particular, where we've got a single type of crop for acres upon acres upon acres. That's not healthy for ecosystems either, right? Biodiversity is decreasing or increasing. There is less biodiversity, right? And it's almost by design. And that's
guess
a problem.
What, Paul? Most of those crops don't go to people. Guess where they go?
Animals.
To animals.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. And another thing, capitalism's endless crusade for profit means today so many animals are killed that 26% of all meats that enter the United States retail market end up in landfills. This corresponds to roughly more than 25 billion fish. 15 billion shellfish, 1 billion chickens, and 100 million other land animals ending up in garbage bins. So that's the waste capitalism creates because of profit, the profit motive.
Yeah.
It's
just like food being thrown out at grocery stores. It's the same kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Like a banana looks a certain way, so they can't sell it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And
how dare you try to steal food from our bins in the back, you homeless people. You're not allowed. You have to come buy the food. It's like, that's wasting food. That's good. That's edible stuff.
I know, if you can't make a profit off it, then it should go to waste because you're not making a buck.
Because in capitalism, profit is the only thing that is really important.
Right. And so I wanted to read some parts of this article, Capitalism and Animal Liberation by Mary Merkinich, who's from Australia. And she wrote,
seems appropriate.
Seems very appropriate. And And she goes on to say the capitalists that run the meat industry earn billions from killing animals every year. In Australia, 520 to 620 million animals are killed, while the beef industry alone makes $17 billion. Animal agriculture has reached this scale because capitalism is driven by profit, not by need. It could not have reached this level of production if the profit motive was absent. And the overproduction demonstrates this. We overproduce things like animals because of profit, and most of it goes to waste. And the environmental crisis has reached such a scale today it threatens the survival of the planet and all species on it. The carbon footprint of the meat industry and its huge consumption of natural resources is another compelling reason for Marxists and other socialists and communists to take up the issue. She goes on to say, a Marxist critique of society remains incomplete if it does not consider the fact that to make profits, capitalists have to not only exploit workers but also nature and animals. At the same time, the current level of development and of production and technology provides us with opportunity to end all human-produced exploitation. Many animal liberationists have written moving accounts in which they explain how the debasement of animals is legitimized or hidden to protect those harming them, but they do not explain why animals are exploited. They provide descriptions of the existing relationships between humans and animals, but cannot explain why this relationship exists. And she goes on to say, some activists consider the main problem to be people mistaking ideas on animals, yet this does not explain how their status as property came to be or why animal exploitation took on the highly technological, industrialized form it has. There is also no clarity as to in whose interests animals are being exploited. Marxists say that animals are not exploited because they are deemed to be inferior, but rather that animals are deemed to be inferior because they are exploited. Saying animals are inferior is used as a justification for maltreatment. And according to Karl Marx, the view of nature attained under the domination of private property and money is a real contempt for and practical debasement of nature. This concept also extends to animals. So she really lays out what I've been trying to say, that that she focuses on like what Marxists tend to kind of like traffic in, and same with vegans, like, or animal liberationists. They kind of miss the bigger picture together, and that's why it's harder for them to come together, and why they should come together, because their missions are the same.
Yeah, it's crazy how many. There's so much.
It's really their common enemy is the capitalist system. That's what it is. If we don't get rid of capitalism, then none of this means anything.
Right. I mean, I'm saying the same thing,
Yeah.
I guess, in a different way, but it's almost curious how folks that have essentially the same goal but don't realize it have a lot of infighting. And
Right.
I think a lot of that comes about because of they get to their end points in similar ways, or in different enough ways that they take issue with it. It's almost like, so if you just take veganism itself, apart from things that its political implications, right? The fact that there's confluence with Marxism, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I know that people wind up at veganism from a number of different angles, right? There are folks that will end up at veganism because animal exploitation is wrong and we have to take a stand against it. There are people that end up at veganism because our current agriculture industry produces so much methane and so much basically misattributes resources so poorly that it is a concern for the environment. It's a green issue. It's a climate change issue. And there are others still who say those things are all well and good, but the reason I'm vegan is health reasons. Right? It is healthier.
It's become this like fad, it's been presented as a fad, and it's not. This is not a fad. This is more than like just for personal health reasons. It should be viewed as a more broader concept and a movement. It's not just because I want to be healthy. It's for, wanting to dismantle the current system that perpetuates what's going on to animals, to people, the environment, the planet, everything. I just kind of want to read some other things that she says here. She, taking the individual choice to change one's diet cannot solve the issue. While there are more vegan products today than 30 years ago, approximately 75% more animals are being slaughtered. Substituting one's diet from one reliant on capitalist meat production to one reliant on capitalist plant production is not enough to end the destruction of the planet. We need to dismantle the engine of the system causing animal suffering and deaths. German Marxist animal liberation group Dawn Association argues, society has arrived at a stage where there is no longer a necessity for socially produced suffering. We know that suffering is something that humans share with animals and that have a responsibility to abolish it. Capitalism produces false needs in meat consumption nowadays, at least in the capitalist centrace, is one of those false needs. The movement for liberation must include the liberation of animals, which is so right. And I think that's where a lot of leftist groups feel like including animal liberation in their praxis is a distraction, and it has nothing to do with what they're trying to accomplish. It has everything to do with it. Because the animal suffering is linked to racism, is linked to imperialism, it's linked to capitalism, it's linked to everything. And if we don't if we don't include it in our praxis, not make it the like number one thing or whatever, it needs to be included in our praxis in order to dismantle capitalism. Because if animal liberation is not included, then no liberation will happen.
I think the United States' actions against agriculture activists, I'll call them, is very telling, right? This is an area where the United States has set out laws that define people who trespass in agriculture business in order to expose I was going to say inhumane, but the conditions for animals in these factory farms, to expose the wrongdoing that's going on, to try to incite people to get mad and come out and protest and be activists. That action is considered terrorism in the United States, legally.
Those people are terrorists, not the white nationalist groups that go around terrorizing black and brown communities.
Right. So the fervor with which America goes after this class of criminal is telling, right? It's a linchpin. It's an important one. It's one that not only the agriculture business has been able to successfully lobby to have a lot of this support go in there, but it's functionally one where the United States feels the need to vilify the people who engage in this type of activism to the point of declaring them terrorists, which legally allow, and I haven't seen this done yet, but legally this allows them to be detained without habeas corpus, right? They can just throw them in Guantanamo or whatever.
A terrorist.
Because
Citizens,
they're terrorists.
Right, because they say so.
They don't need a trial anymore.
No.
We don't need to tell them why we're imprisoning them. We don't need to give them a trial. They're terrorists. Yeah. Legally, they could do that. They haven't yet to like an American citizen. Can you imagine the outcry?
But Iran is not that democracy. Neither is China. Because,
but they could.
Because, we just have the highest prison population in the world.
I feel like we should point this out. DCK Punk mentioned this a few minutes ago. We were talking about the strikes, the airstrikes so far. So an update to that, John Hodges, DCK Punk, says 0 casualties. They told Americans before the strike. So apparently Iran notified the air bases and was like, hey, we're
God, they're such terrorists.
Yeah, I know.
How dare they
it's the nicest
give
military
the
action ever.
courtesy of telling human beings to get out of the way, especially the enemy.
Right. We're about to retaliate
Wow.
for the 25 people that you killed, and then our top military general that you assassinated. We're going to retaliate by targeting your infrastructure.
Wow.
Heads up. Maybe don't have your military there when we
he
go
said,
bomb
check your
base.
text.
Check your text. Did you text me directly? Did I get that wrong? All right. Hang on. You did text me. There's an attachment. There's an image. What is this?
Oh, shit.
Imam of peace, pray for peace. This is being repeated a lot by Middle East journalists. Quote, Tehran told Washington, D.C. through proxies that it will bomb U.S. bases in Iraq to save face and claim it is a response for killing Soleimani. That's why the USA emptied its bases hours before the attacks. 0 casualties. So, yeah, that's what it's saying.
And
it sounds like.
Who posted that?
At Imam of Peace.
Okay.
Well,
they have a blue check, so it must mean something.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's good news. Again, Iran showing rational and being humane. Unlike the empire, the U.S. empire, it really shows you who the real terrorist is. And that's the U.S. empire. It always has been, always will be, as long as it exists.
Yeah.
It's a rogue terrorist state, and they would never do that.
I love that there was a worldwide survey, and I forget who did it. I want to say it was like it was a Nobel or I don't know. There was a big survey that was done a year or two ago that was like, what nation do you think poses the greatest threat to world peace?
Yeah.
Right? And guess what the nation was that came out on top of that list? Overwhelmingly. Worldwide poll. Worldwide poll.
Let me think.
Yeah, I thought it was Azerbaijan too, but it's not.
Shit.
It's us.
Oh, shit.
It's America. The rest
God.
of the world thinks that we are the greatest threat to world peace. The rest of the world. The only country that did not choose America
was America.
Guess who we thought the greatest threat to world peace was?
Wait. China.
Iran. That's what we said. America thinks Iran is the greatest threat to world peace. Iran thinks it's America. Iran also is backed by the rest of the world in thinking that it's America. So there's that.
Yeah, that's when you say America.
America
is the terrorist.
Yeah.
America.
Oh, yeah, that's just, we're so, like, what, the fact that Americans think that so heavily and the rest of the world doesn't says something about the level of propaganda in this country. The fact that Americans are like, man, who is the greatest threat to world peace in the world? I guess it's Iran. Mm-hmm. You know, that was a country that we came up with. That's like, how many times has Iran bombed the United States?
Zip.
How many military incursions has Iran made elsewhere in the world? I mean, are they setting up military bases halfway across the globe?
Are they doing it on our borders?
Yeah, where are they setting up
here
bases?
In America? No. That's just the United States. They have thousands of military bases across the
right. So what has Iran done? That's
nothing.
Militarily, what have they? Well, they've been fighting some ISIS.
They're fighting the fascist jihadist ISIS group that the U.S. created along with Saudi Arabia and Israel, but they stand in the way of U.S. hegemony and imperialism and profits. So that's why they are the terrorists, because they are interfering with capitalists making money and the empire expanding. Because they stand up to that bullshit, like they are today, and rightfully so. Yep. So this is.
But anyway, yeah, sorry, but we went back to Iran there for a minute.
Yeah, we did.
That's just Iran's on the mind.
Yeah, it is, and it should be. It should be. We should really, we should be in the streets about this.
We are,
and hopefully there'll be actions tomorrow, if not now, when we get off of this, which is. In any minute, actually.
We'll wrap up. So as we go,
so but I think that's a good note to end it on.
Sure.
For the first show, we didn't get to go over our other topic, which we're going to talk.
You want to tackle it now? We could keep going,
but we only have 10 minutes.
We can end when we want to end. Nobody's on after us. This studio isn't going to be used. You want to do it?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it.
So what we're going to talk about another form of propaganda that the U.S. has been spreading around is this bullshit idea about concentration camps in China with the Uyghur.
Uyghur. Not sure how we're pronouncing it.
I'm sorry. I think that's right. Uyghur, Muslim population, and luckily we have outlets like we've said before, like the Gray Zone, which debunk this myth, which was built on 2 studies that are not even studies.
Right.
They're not even studies. So the claim that China has detained millions of ethnic Uyghurs in China is repeated with increasing frequency, but little scrutiny is ever applied. While this extraordinary claim is treated as unassailable in the West, it is in fact based on 2 highly dubious studies.
Studies
first,
in quotes.
Yeah, in quote. Yes, in quotes. It's important to put this in there.
Yep.
The first by the U.S. government-backed network of Chinese human rights defenders, formed its estimate by interviewing a grand total of, guess the number?
I already know.
8 people.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing?
8 people.
Can you imagine saying, yeah, I conducted a study of 8 fucking people?
Yeah, and what's more is that they basically are like, hey, have you ever been detained in this detention center? Oh, we found somebody, one of the 8 people. So let's extrapolate that number.
And who knows if they paid him or
right.
It's like
that means that X number of millions of Uyghurs are currently being detained or in re-education camps, and that's they're mass incarcerating everyone, and we determine that.
Let's multiply that.
To this group of 8 people, this small family's worth of people.
Yeah.
Well, regular sized family.
I don't even know. I'm not a math surgeon, but and the second study relied on a flimsy media report and speculation. It was authored by Adrian Zenz.
This guy's great.
Oh yeah,
What a gem.
He's a treat and a half. A far right fundamentalist Christian who opposes homosexuality and gender equality, supports spanking children, and believes he is led by God on a mission against China. So, again, what a real reputable guy, and what a
certainly the guy that believes
act.
that he's on a God or divine mission, right,
No,
against
he has
China.
no agenda.
Certainly no conflict of interest there.
Of course, and his fucking wackadoo, crazy Christian Zionist, end of times shit shouldn't worry anybody.
Yeah, it's so weird.
So thanks to questionable sources like the Chinese human rights defenders, the United States government has accused China of arbitrarily detaining 800,000 to possibly 2 million Uyghurs and other Muslims in internment camps designed to erase religious and ethnic identities. Testifying before a Senate Foreign Relations Committee, State Department official Scott Bubsey stated that this is the U.S. government assessment backed by our intelligence community. The Chinese government rejected U.S. allegations and claimed that it is, in fact, establishing vocational education and training centers to prevent the breeding and spreading of terrorism and religious extremism. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has stated that there are no so-called re-education camps in Xinjiang. That's right? Say it like that.
I think
Xinjiang?
it's hard. Yeah, so it's.
I'm sorry.
Where's the spelling of it? It's up
It's
here.
Xingiang. Xinjiang.
I don't know. I'm not great with
I'm going to go with that, and if I'm wrong, just let me know. Jesus Christ. Okay. The vocational education and training centers legally operate in Xinjiang aim to help a small number of people affected by terrorist and extremist ideologies and equip them with skills so they can be self-reliant and reintegrate into society. And the second key source for claims that China has detained millions of Uyghur Muslims is, like we said before, Adrian Zenz. He is a senior fellow in China Studies at the Far Right Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation, which was established in the 80s by the U.S. government. And this is, I've explained this on the show before on Hard Lens, of the Victims of Communism Group Memorial or whatever they are. They are a group of fascist Nazi sympathizers that are Nazi revisionists, and they kind of conflate, that Nazis were a lesser evil than communists, and they had to be with, Nazism was a lesser evil than communism. It's a really great group of people. They really got a good head on their shoulders, obviously. In September of 2018, Zenz wrote an article published in the Central Asian Survey Journal concluding that Xinjiang's total re-education internment figure may be estimated at just over 1 million. Like the Chinese human rights defenders, Zenz arrived at his estimate at over 1 million in a dubious manner. He based it on a singular report by Istanbul's TV, a Uyghur exile media organization based in Turkey, which was republished by Newsweek in Japan. Far from the impartial journalistic organization, Istanbul, I'm sorry, not Istanbul, Istiqlal. I don't know why I said Istanbul.
Istiqlal?
Where someone's going to have to...
Words and things.
Words are weird. Okay. Advances the separatist cause while playing host to an assortment of extremist figures. So that's basically where this information is coming from. It's coming from very suspect sources, to say the least.
And being extrapolated on even further.
Right.
Right. So this guy, Zenz, it's amazing. I'm just like the little tidbits in here about this guy. So Zen's work in China, inspired by his biblical worldview, as he recently explained in an interview to the Wall Street Journal, saying, I feel very clearly led by God to do this. I can put it that way. I'm not afraid to say that. With Xinjiang, things are really changed. It became like a mission or a ministry. He says, so Zen outlined these views in the book he co-authored in 2012 titled Worthy to Escape, Why All Believers Will Not Be Raptured Before the Tribulation. So he's an end times theology guy, which is a particular brand of... Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the tome, Zen's discussed the return of Jesus Christ with the coming wrath of God and the rise of the Antichrist. Zen's predicted that the future fall of capitalism will bring to power the Antichrist within a few decades. He identified the force that will usher the Antichrist into power as the economic and financial fall of Babylon, with Babylon symbolically represented by the world global economic system, capitalism. Along with the fall of capitalism, Zenz also views postmodern relativism and tolerance thinking and their apparent promotion of homosexuality, gender equality, and nonviolent parenting to be threats to Christianity and the deceptive leopard-like power behind the Antichrist. Like, this guy is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, for real.
So that's the kind of character that I'm like, this is who CNN and the Wall Street Journal, they're basing their estimates on the Uyghur population's, imprisonment, mass imprisonment. He's the guy. He's the guy that put together the numbers for them. That and the 8 individuals who were interviewed by essentially an American think tank. So that's roughly the story that we're talking about here. This is the other thing that when I first heard it, I went, something's up with this, right? We're at a time when there were mass protests going on in Baghdad at the time, civilian protests against the government because, public services had not been reinstated, right? There was not much in the way of public internet. They didn't have electricity in a lot of places. You had mass protest movements going on elsewhere in the Middle East. You had the Yellow Vest movement is still in full swing. You've got climate. What was the Friday protest thing? That was going on in full swing. And then America's got to be like, you know what we should all be mad about? We should all be mad about China because they're imprisoning people in this Western region, and you don't even know how to pronounce that people group. So you should be mad about it. You should be really, you know what? That's the thing we should all be mad about. And so I remember I expressed this to one of my siblings, and he was like, but you don't really know that that's not true. This should be something. Shouldn't this be something that we should be concerned about? Aren't we concerned about all people? And I'm like, something strike me. A red flag has gone up that this is like a distractionary tactic, particularly because it's something that is bad that is happening that isn't America's fault. Hey, everyone, be mad about this because it's definitely not our fault this time.
I mean, also we got to look at the history of it. I mean, these re-education centers have been around for years. They weren't. They're just created now, but this is coming up at a time when the United States has concentration camps.
Yeah,
for real concentration camps in the United States. Children are dying. People are being raped in these concentration camps of people from Latin America fleeing U.S. imperialism. They're trying to flee from that violence to come here, but they are being captured by the fascistic border patrol and ICE and put in these concentration camps, sleep on cold concrete floors, kids are dying of the flu, all sorts of horrific things are going on there. It's to distract. Again, the empire distracts or projects itself. So it just diverts away from its evil empire-ishness onto other places. Because if people knew what was really going on in their own borders of the empire, there would be more outrage, I would hope. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, again, they want to direct people. People have a certain level of desire to stay connected with what's going on politically, both here in the United States and in the world. And there's a certain amount of outrage meter people have. People have got so much room for outrage that, boy, we don't want people to hear things that are going to get them outraged about what the United States is doing. So the more things that we can get people outraged about that really aren't our fault, more the better, right? Because people aren't looking at America anymore. I was just saying that's the strategy, right? That's what is being hoisted on the American people.
And I'll say this: we should really emulate these what China's doing with these re-education centers. We should really have them here, especially people in our political elites and everyone else that that obviously traffics in white pathology and racism needs to go in these re-education centers, because that's the only way to rid of white pathology and racism is to unlearn it. And that's what's destroying the planet. The white pathology is the most dangerous pathology in the world. And that's what the U.S. empire is built on. It's built off of that pathology, and that's what it's doing around the world right now. So we should really emulate that. China has the right idea again.
Yep. Not doing so bad over there.
No.
Yep.
But yeah, I think.
Yeah, probably time to wrap the show. Do you have a like a what do you call it, a sign off? Do you have a
No, I don't. I don't.
Solidarity.
Yeah, solidarity. And thanks for stopping by. All the little
you have a Patreon
comrades there.
Tell people about your Patreon.
I got a Patreon page. It's in the YouTube.
In the description, show description.
Yeah. So you guys can find it there.
I think it's very easy too. Isn't it just The Red Lettuce? Patreon.com/The Red Lettuce,
yes,
I believe.
Yes, Paul, you remember that.
Yeah,
yes.
Because websites.
Yes. You actually have a better memory than I do. Paul remembers things better than me.
That's not true, I'm sure.
But yeah, and follow the show on Twitter, Instagram.
So this has been episode 1.
This is episode 1.
The Phantom Lettuce.
The Phantom Lettuce.
We came up with that just before the show.
I know.
It's just like, it was too good.
We had no title for the show because all this shit was happening, and it was just like, shit.
The Phantom Lettuce.
Phantom Lettuce sounds good.
Perfect.
Because it's just
that's
just
the
right.
most
It's right as
worthwhile
rain.
Star Wars film.
It's right
That's
as
the
rain,
one to watch.
Paul.
It's right
Yes.
as rain.
And then hopefully we'll have episode 2 and we'll strike back.
Yeah.
The red lettuce strikes back. Okay, we gotta go.
Peace, everyone.
Peace, everyone.